Welcome to the Deceived Mike channel. Before we dive into today's story, a quick favor. If you enjoy amazing stories, consider supporting this channel by subscribing. It helps a lot. Now, let's get into today's story. Honestly, this one still amazes me. When I married Emma, I truly believed she was the one, the person I was meant to spend forever with. For 7 years, our life was steady, maybe not extraordinary, but happy in a way that felt safe. We had 3 kids, including a set of twins, and they became the very center of our world. We built our life in a quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind with manicured lawns and peaceful streets. Looking back on those early days, they felt almost dreamlike. The calm of the nights wrapped around us, making it seem like we were in our own little bubble where nothing bad could reach us. Evenings were filled with the comforting sounds of our laughter, the soft coos of the twins in their cribs, and our eldest stumbling around the living room, trying to walk. Most nights when I got home, Emma would be waiting for me with a warm hug and a teasing remark about the chaos of raising 3 little ones. Those small moments made everything feel perfect. So perfect that I never saw the storm coming. Everything changed last year, with a single decision Emma made without ever asking me. That choice shattered our marriage, leaving behind nothing but anger, betrayal, and a burning need for justice. If someone had told me back then that Emma's loyalty was so fragile, I would have laughed in their face. But loyalty isn't always as solid as we think. Sometimes it disappears in an instant, the moment someone decides their spouse no longer matters. One night, Emma dropped a bombshell on me. Her twin sister, Olivia, and Olivia's husband, Nathan, had been struggling to have a baby for years. Their doctor had recommended surrogacy. Emma had already decided, on her own, that she would carry their child. The real betrayal wasn't just the idea itself. It was the fact that she had gone behind my back, moving forward with it without ever considering how I felt. I remember that moment like a scene frozen in time. We were sitting on the couch together, though mentally we were miles apart. The TV played some late-night comedy, show neither of us was really watching. Emma glanced at me, phone in hand, and casually said, "Lucas, there's something I've decided to do." Something about the way she said it sent a chill down my spine. Emma only used that tone when she had already made up her mind, when nothing I said would change it. My stomach tightened. I muted the TV. "What's going on? You look serious." She tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear and met my gaze. "I'm going to be Olivia's surrogate." I blinked. "What do you mean?" Her voice was steady, her eyes unwavering. "Olivia can't carry a baby. She's gone through round after round of IVF, and nothing has worked. The doctors suggested a surrogate, and since she and I share the same DNA, I'm the perfect choice. I've already spoken to the clinic." She said it so matter-of-factly that for a split second, I thought she was joking. But there wasn't a hint of a smile on her face. My pulse spiked. "You've already—" I stopped, swallowing hard. "Emma, are you telling me you're carrying Nathan's child?" She let out a slow breath. "Olivia's child. And Nathan's. Genetically, it's theirs. I'm just carrying it." My jaw clenched. "And when exactly did you decide to do this without telling me?" Emma lifted her chin slightly. "I knew you'd freak out. I made this decision because Olivia is my twin, and I can't stand watching her suffer. Nathan and I talked about it at length, and I'm sure this is what I want to do." Something hot and sharp twisted in my gut. "Nathan and you talked about it." I repeated, my voice low, barely containing my anger. "That's good to know. Meanwhile, I'm your husband, and I'm the last to find out. Do you even care how this makes me feel?" She sighed, frustration flickering across her face. "Lucas, I'm sorry, but it's my body. I'm doing this whether you approve or not. I hoped you'd support me. And yeah, I should have told you sooner, but I knew you'd just try to talk me out of it. And this is too important." For a moment, I couldn't even speak. My throat was too tight with rage. "So that's it? You expect me to just accept this? To watch you carry another man's child under our roof like it's no big deal?" Emma set her phone down and crossed her arms. "Call it what you want, but this is happening. Olivia and Nathan are depending on me. And if you really love me, you'll respect that." A chilling calm settled over me, more unsettling than outright fury. Respect? You don't show respect by blindsiding your husband with a decision that affects our entire marriage. This isn't just about you. It's about our family. Emma stood, fists clenched. Stop acting like the victim. Olivia is my family too, and I'm helping her. If you can't understand that, then maybe I gave you too much credit all these years. That was the moment something inside me snapped. Too much credit? My voice was dangerously low. Emma, if you go through with this, it's going to destroy us. She stepped past me, her shoulders rigid. Then maybe we weren't as strong as I thought. I stayed behind, my body rigid with anger, my pulse pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The house felt unnervingly quiet, thick with the weight of what had just happened. I tried to breathe through the rage, but deep down, I already knew the truth. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, Emma's words echoed in my head, reminding me just how little my opinion had mattered. The next morning, I woke up to the sight of her moving around the house as if nothing had changed. But everything had, and the tension between us only grew thicker in the days that followed. Emma spoke openly about her doctor's appointments, the fertility medications, the implantation schedule, like we were discussing meal plans instead of a life-altering decision. Every mention of it felt like a slap in the face, a painful reminder that she'd made her choice without me. Whatever partnership we once had was crumbling before my eyes. 2 nights later, I walked into the kitchen and stopped cold. A box from the fertility clinic sat in the fridge, and the kitchen table was littered with syringes, hormone vials, and stacks of paperwork. Emma sat flipping through a thick packet, completely unfazed. I pointed at the mess. "What is all this?" My voice was sharper than I intended. She barely looked up. "Hormone treatments. I have to start them so my body is ready for the embryo transfer. The clinic sent them earlier than I expected." I stared at her in disbelief. "And you didn't think this was worth discussing with me?" Emma shrugged. "We're past discussions, Lucas. I'm moving forward." A tight, bitter laugh escaped me. "You don't care that you're pushing me away, do you?" She rolled her eyes. "Oh, stop being dramatic. It's just 9 months, and then I hand the baby over to Olivia. It's not like I'm replacing our kids." I shook my head, my voice dropping. "You can justify it however you want, but if you go through with this, I won't be here when it's over." Her eyes met mine, unwavering. "If you can't handle my decision, then you're free to leave." My jaw clenched. "This isn't about handling it, Emma. It's about our marriage. You blindsided me, made this choice with Nathan." She cut me off, her tone turning sharp. "Nathan is the baby's father. Of course he needed to be involved." A hollow laugh escaped me. "And I'm your husband. Or does that not matter anymore?" She simply picked up her paperwork again, flipping through the pages like I wasn't even standing there. "We're done here, Lucas." A sick feeling settled in my chest. She didn't even see the damage she was causing. My fingers twitched with the urge to grab the papers from her hands and rip them to shreds, but I knew that wouldn't change anything. So instead, I turned on my heel, left her to her plans, and focused on steadying my breath. That night, lying awake in the dark, I made my decision. If Emma was determined to go down this path alone, then she could do it without me. I would file for divorce, because no matter how I tried to twist it, I couldn't stand by and watch her carry Nathan's child. The moment Emma found out I had contacted a lawyer, she stormed into the living room where I was helping our oldest with homework. Fury radiated off her, though she kept her voice low, careful not to startle our child. "How dare you?" she hissed. I sighed, setting down the crayon I'd been holding. "Stay here, bud. I need to talk to Mom." Then I led Emma into the hallway, keeping my voice even. "Lower your voice. The kids don't need to hear this." Her eyes blazed. "So, you thought it was reasonable to rush to a lawyer? To start divorce proceedings just like that?" Heat rose in my chest. "I told you what would happen if you went forward without me, and you did it anyway. I'm done being disregarded." Tears welled in her eyes, but they were tears of anger. "Lucas, we can fix this. You just need to accept that I'm doing this, and then we can move on." I held up a hand. "No, Emma, you're not listening. There is no fix." Her lips quivered. "I didn't think it would come to this." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "Well, maybe you should have. Because when you made that decision without me, you made this inevitable." She opened her mouth to argue, but then snapped it shut, her frustration boiling over. Finally, she spun on her heel and stomped upstairs, leaving me standing there, heart pounding, wondering how the woman I had loved for so long had become someone I barely recognized. In our state, a 1-year separation was required before a divorce could be finalized. Emma knew that, and for that year, we would still be under the same roof, at least for a while. She refused to leave, claiming she had nowhere else to go, that she needed bed rest sometimes, and that the kids deserved stability. I didn't want to uproot my children either, so I tolerated her presence. Though tolerated was a generous word. She took over the guest room or the living room couch while I stayed in the master bedroom. We coexisted like strangers, barely speaking, moving through the same house as if we weren't once a family. Of course, the kids noticed. They asked why Mom and Dad didn't sit together at dinner anymore, why things felt different. We tried to keep it civil for them, but the tension was impossible to hide. Then one weekend, Emma's twin sister, Olivia, showed up with Nathan in tow. I found them in the living room, flipping through a baby catalog and discussing strollers like they owned the place. Our kids were outside playing, so I had no reason to pretend to be polite. Nathan stood up awkwardly from my recliner when I walked in. "Lucas, hey," he said, scratching the back of his neck. "We were just, planning for the baby." I stared at him, at the glossy pages in his hand, and felt something inside me crack. This wasn't my home anymore. It was theirs, and I wasn't sure how much longer I could stand it. Emma rested a hand on her belly, which had just started to show. "Nathan and Olivia want to make sure we're ready," she said. "I need certain things here to stay comfortable." I stared at her, my frustration bubbling up. Why can't Nathan buy all that for his own house? That's where the baby's going to live, isn't it? Nathan let out a nervous chuckle. "Well, we figured it'd be smart to have some supplies here too, while Emma's pregnant." I cut him off, my voice sharp. "Don't talk about supplies in my house like this is some kind of baby lounge." Emma's cheeks flushed with irritation. "You're being unreasonable. Do you expect me to stand around for hours at their place if I'm nauseous or need a rest? I live here, Lucas." My jaw tightened. "Yes, you do. But maybe Nathan and Olivia should respect that this is still my home and not treat it like their personal planning headquarters." Nathan shot a glance at Olivia, who stood behind the couch with her arms folded. She met my gaze with an icy stare. "Lucas, do you think we like being here?" she said. "We're just trying to make this process as smooth as possible for Emma." A bitter laugh escaped me. "Oh, I get it. I'm supposed to just go along with it. Maybe rub Emma's feet, indulge her cravings, play the doting husband while she carries another man's child?" Olivia threw her hands up. "For God's sake, we're family. This isn't about yours or mine. It's about supporting each other." I met her glare with one of my own. "It stopped being about family the second you two dragged Emma into this behind my back." Nathan let out an exasperated sigh. "Look, man, I know this is uncomfortable." "Uncomfortable doesn't even cover it," I snapped. "But if you're so worried about Emma, set up a space for her at your place. Buy every single thing from that catalog. Just don't do it here. And if you keep showing up unannounced, we're going to have a real problem." Emma shot to her feet, her face tight with indignation. "You can't just ban them from the house. This is my home, too." I turned to her, my patience worn thin. "Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to share this pregnancy with them instead of your husband." We stood locked in a silent battle, tension crackling between us. Finally, Olivia grabbed Nathan's arm. "Let's go," she said, her voice shaking with anger. "We don't need this." They stormed out, and as soon as the door shut behind them, Emma whirled on me, jabbing a finger in my direction. "You're acting like a child. I hope you realize you're alienating our children's aunt and uncle." I shrugged. I'd rather alienate them than let them waltz in here like my marriage never meant anything. She let out an angry huff and stormed off, leaving me alone with the seething rage that had become my new normal. The next few months were a grim routine. Emma's belly grew, and so did her complaints, morning sickness, backaches, exhaustion. She expected me to care. "Lucas, could you grab me some crackers? Can you bring me a pillow for my back?" I refused every time. "What kind of heartless man are you?" she'd hiss. "You can watch the mother of your children suffer and not lift a finger." I'd fire back, "You're Nathan's surrogate. Let him handle it. Or better yet, call Olivia. I've got my own priorities, raising our kids and keeping this house running. She'd stomp away in frustration, sometimes in tears, ranting about how cruel I was. But her tears meant nothing to me. I reminded myself that when she made this choice, she hadn't cared about my feelings. So I returned the favor. She tried guilt-tripping me. One night, she showed up at my bedroom door, her face a mix of desperation and hope. "I can't sleep," she said softly. "My legs are cramping. Can you rub them like you did when I was pregnant with our twins?" I stared at her, my expression blank. Then I said flatly, "No," and shut the door in her face. Our kids noticed the tension. One evening, our oldest looked up at me with wide, innocent eyes. "Dad, why don't you hug Mom anymore?" I swallowed the bitterness rising in my throat and forced a gentle tone. "Sometimes grown-ups don't get along, buddy. But I love you, and I'll always be here." The innocence in my child's eyes made me want to punch a hole through the wall. I blamed Nathan and Olivia for putting us in this situation. But mostly, I resented Emma for letting it happen. As the months dragged on, her family started meddling. Her mother called, her voice thick with disapproval. "Lucas, I can't believe how selfish you're being. Emma is doing something incredible for her sister. How can you refuse to support her?" My response was ice cold. "Maybe ask your daughter why she did it without telling me. I owe her nothing. That baby isn't mine." Then her father tried to intimidate me. "Young man," he growled over the phone, "you're walking down a dangerous path. If you don't step up and help Emma, we'll make sure you regret it." I smirked at the phone. "That's funny, because I already regret trusting your daughter with my marriage. Good luck with your threats." They hung up on me. No doubt the entire extended family saw me as the villain. But I didn't care. The facts would speak for themselves. Emma was pregnant with another man's child, and she had used our shared finances to make it happen without my consent. That was on her. One of the worst confrontations happened in her 7th month. Emma came home one evening, struggling with heavy grocery bags. She nearly dropped one on the porch before calling out, "Lucas, can you help me? My back is killing me." I leaned against the door frame, arms crossed. "Why don't you ask Nathan or Olivia?" I said flatly. "They're the reason you're in this situation." Her eyes welled up, though beneath the sadness, I saw anger flicker. "I've been at the hospital for hours getting tests done. I'm exhausted." I allowed a dry laugh. "You're still my wife, whether you like it or not," she insisted. "Not for much longer," I shot back. "And definitely not in any way that matters." "You made sure of that." A frustrated cry tore from her throat as she turned, dragging the grocery bags inside. A few cans slipped free, rolling across the porch, but I stayed rooted in place. She wrestled everything inside herself, banging her forearm against the doorframe in the process. Breathless, she set the bags down on the kitchen table and glared at me. "You can't keep treating me like this," she snapped. I raised an eyebrow. "I'm not treating you any kind of way. I'm just done pretending to be the devoted husband you so easily discarded." Her hand settled protectively over her belly, tears streaking her face. "One day, when this baby is born, you're going to regret how heartless you've been." I let out a humorless chuckle. "Doubt it, because by then, you'll be gone, and so will this child." She sucked in a sharp breath, as if I'd struck her before storming off to the guest room. The house fell into an eerie silence, despite all the tension hanging in the air. I exhaled slowly, wondering for a fleeting moment if I'd gone too far. But any trace of pity crumbled under the weight of my anger. She had made this decision without me, disregarding our marriage like it meant nothing. I was simply responding in kind. Around the 8th month, Emma's labor started unexpectedly in the middle of the night. I woke to the sound of pained groans in the hallway, followed by frantic knocking on my bedroom door. "Lucas," she cried out, her voice shaking. "My water broke. The contractions are coming fast. Please help me." I swung the door open and found her hunched over, hands gripping her swollen belly, sweat beading along her forehead. For a brief moment, memories of her previous labors flashed through my mind, the times I had been there, supporting her through the pain. But the bitterness quickly snuffed it out. "I'm not taking you to the hospital," I said coldly. "That's Nathan's responsibility." Her face twisted in disbelief. Nathan's not answering. Olivia's phone is off. I need to get to the hospital now. I shrugged. Call an ambulance. Another contraction hit, making her clutch the doorframe with a desperate whimper. Lucas, please. You can't just leave me like this. I met her gaze, unflinching. Watch me. She staggered, tears streaming down her face. You're cruel, she choked out. I gave a short nod. This is what happens when you disregard your husband's feelings. Good luck with the baby. Then I shut the door. Minutes later, I heard her fumbling with her phone, presumably calling 911. 20 minutes later, the flashing lights of the ambulance illuminated my window. I listened as the paramedics helped her out of the house, their voices low and urgent. A brief pang of guilt tried to worm its way in, but I shoved it down. She had made her choice. Why should I rush to her side when this baby had nothing to do with me? By morning, my phone was bombarded with calls from Emma's mother. Furious voicemails accused me of abandoning Emma in her time of need. I deleted every single one without listening past the first few seconds. She had chosen to carry a child for her sister. Let her sister's family be the ones to deal with it. Emma and the baby stayed in the hospital for several days. The newborn, a girl, had arrived early but was stable. Olivia, however, was experiencing complications, leaving Nathan stretched thin, running between two hospital rooms. Meanwhile, I went on with my life. I got the kids to school, went to work, made dinner. Business as usual. When Emma's mother called to announce, Emma will be home in a couple of days, my only response was, that's her choice. Then I hung up. I was in the living room reading when Emma finally returned. She looked exhausted, her skin pale, dark circles beneath her eyes. In one hand, she clutched the handle of a baby carrier. She set it down with a heavy sigh and collapsed onto the couch. A soft whimper rose from inside the carrier. I glanced at the tiny bundle inside, a living, breathing reminder of the betrayal that had shattered my marriage. So, I said, my tone clipped. Why are you here with the baby? Shouldn't she be with Olivia? Emma closed her eyes for a moment, her voice weary. Olivia is still in the hospital, recovering. Nathan is overwhelmed. They asked me to keep her here for a few weeks. I scoffed. Did they ask? Or did you volunteer? Her eyes flashed with irritation. Does it matter? I couldn't just leave her there. She's helpless. I folded my arms. You should have thought about that before signing up to be their surrogate. But let's get one thing straight. I'm not helping. If she cries all night and you're exhausted, that's your problem. She let out a shaky breath, rubbing her temples. A single tear slipped down her cheek. Have you always been this cruel, or did I make you this way? She murmured, almost to herself. I didn't hesitate. That's a question you can ask yourself in the middle of the night when she's screaming. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have real children to take care of. She flinched, as if my words had physically struck her, but she said nothing as I walked away into the kitchen to make dinner. For the next month, the nights were a constant cycle of the baby's cries. Emma, running on fumes, would shuffle through the house, try to warm bottles, and soothe the infant. Exhaustion clung to her, and on more than one occasion, she stood before me, dark circles under her eyes, pleading for help. Each time, my answer was the same. No. One night, as she held a bottle with trembling hands, tears dripped onto the counter. Just half an hour, she begged. I need to lie down. The baby's been crying for hours. I met her desperate gaze without flinching. Call Nathan. Or your mother. A broken sob escaped her before she turned away, the baby's wails reverberating through the hallway. For a brief moment, pity stirred in me. Not for Emma, but for the child who had no fault in any of this. But I quickly shoved it aside. Emma had made her choices. She could live with them. Her parents came by frequently, their words sharp and accusatory. They pointed fingers, called me heartless, unfit, a disgrace to my marriage. Emma's father took it further, cornering me in the kitchen one day. You ought to be ashamed. Emma just had a baby. She needs rest. You can't abandon her like this. I met his anger head on. She should have considered that before trampling over my boundaries. This isn't my responsibility. Let Nathan and your family handle it. His face burned red before he stomped off, muttering curses under his breath. The criticism was relentless, but I endured it, knowing the law was on my side, especially once financial records came into play. The divorce crawled forward, but the evidence against Emma was clear. She had dipped into our joint accounts for surrogacy-related expenses, even forging my signature at times. The court documents laid it all out: her deliberate deception, her disregard for my objections, the financial trail that proved it. The judge didn't look kindly on forgery. Emma's attorney tried to paint me as an unfeeling man who abandoned his pregnant wife, but the truth was the baby wasn't mine, and she had orchestrated this entire mess in secret. Even Nathan and Olivia, despite their desperation to have the child, kept quiet about the money. They were relieved they weren't legally liable for Emma's financial missteps. Their focus was on the baby, though with Olivia's health complications and Nathan's shaky employment, they couldn't even assume custody right away. The baby's presence in our home became a strained, awkward arrangement, one no one wanted but had no immediate way out of. By the time the final hearing approached, Emma was physically recovered but emotionally drained. She spent her days caring for an infant she couldn't keep, her frustration mounting with every sleepless night. 2 weeks before our final court date, she cornered me in the living room, the baby sleeping in a bassinet nearby. "I need some financial help," she said, her voice flat. I glanced up from my laptop. "For what?" She hesitated before crossing her arms. "My doctor says I should be focusing on postpartum recovery, not scrambling for a job." I raised an eyebrow. "Not my problem, Emma." Her expression hardened. "I'm still the mother of your children," she snapped. "I'm not asking for money for the surrogacy. I mean to live, to take care of our kids when they're with me, to cover my share of expenses." Closing my laptop, I met her glare. "Once we're divorced, I'll pay child support, as required by law. But I'm not giving you spousal support." Her jaw clenched. "I deserve some financial stability. I sacrificed my body for my sister's child." I cut in, voice firm. "Not for me. That's the difference." Her breath hitched, and for a moment, she looked like she might break down. "You're unbelievable," she whispered. "I have postpartum depression. Doesn't that matter to you?" I exhaled, shaking my head. "I care about our kids, Emma. But you brought this situation into our lives, not me. If you're struggling, lean on Nathan and Olivia." "I'm done." Tears welled in her eyes. "You'll regret this." "You've said that before," I replied. "The only regret I have is that any of this happened." Her gaze drifted toward the baby, and when she looked back at me, her voice wavered. "I never imagined losing you. I just wanted to help my sister." A dry, humorless chuckle escaped me. "And I never imagined you'd throw our marriage away. Life has a way of surprising us both." She didn't respond. Instead, she turned and walked away, leaving me in the silence. In the final week before the hearing, Emma decided to move out. Until Olivia was well enough to take the baby, Emma would stay with her mother. She packed quickly, boxes clattering as she shoved belongings into them. Tears streaked her face as she folded the last of her clothes. Our kids, watching from the doorway, looked up at her with wide, worried eyes. "Are you leaving forever?" Emma crouched to their level, forcing a shaky smile. "No, sweethearts. You'll see me all the time. I love you so much." They nodded, but sadness lingered in their faces. When the day came, she stood in the foyer with her suitcase by her side and the baby carrier at her feet. Red-rimmed eyes met mine. "One last time, Lucas. Don't finalize the divorce. Let's fix this." For a moment, something in my chest tensed. Then it passed. The only way to fix this would be turning back time. And we both know that's not possible. A tear slipped down her cheek. "I never wanted to lose you. I never wanted to lose my marriage either," I said, bitter. "But here we are." She lingered for a second longer before picking up the baby carrier and walking out the door. And just like that, it was over. Emma's departure marked the final chapter of our marriage. She took the baby, her suitcase, and whatever remnants of our life together she could carry. The soft click of the door behind her echoed louder than any shouting match we'd ever had. For the first time in months, I felt something close to peace. At the last court hearing, Emma sat with her attorney at one table while I sat with mine at another. Nathan and Olivia watched from the gallery, their expressions tight with anxiety. The judge, a no-nonsense woman, had combed through every piece of evidence. Emma's lawyer attempted an emotional plea, painting me as a cruel husband who had abandoned his pregnant wife. My lawyer, however, laid out the facts. Emma had made the surrogacy decision alone, spent joint finances on the process without my consent, and even forged my signature. I had expressed my stance repeatedly, and she had ignored it every time. When the judge finally spoke, her tone was firm. She ruled that Emma had acted recklessly, disregarding our partnership. The baby was not mine, so I had no legal or financial obligations toward it. As for spousal support, the court saw no reason I should pay, given Emma's misuse of funds. Custody of our 3 children was awarded primarily to me, with Emma granted visitation, provided she could maintain a stable home. She was also ordered to repay a portion of the money she had taken. Emma sat frozen as the ruling was handed down, her face crumbling as silent tears streamed down. Nathan and Olivia exchanged stricken looks. As for me, I felt justified. The battle was over, and I had won. Outside the courtroom, Emma approached me, her voice small and unsteady. "Lucas, I never wanted this. I made a mistake, but I never thought you'd completely shut me out." I met her gaze, remembering all the times I had pleaded with her to reconsider, only to be dismissed. "It wasn't just a mistake, Emma. It was a betrayal. And now, we're paying the price." She exhaled shakily. "I just wish you could forgive me someday." I shook my head. "You forged my signature. You lied to me for months. Forgiveness isn't that easy." Olivia stepped in, attempting to mediate. "Lucas, she's sorry. She only did this to help me." I pulled away from her touch. "And now you have your baby. Take responsibility for what came with it." "I'm done." Without another word, I turned and walked away, feeling lighter with every step. In the weeks that followed, Emma moved in with her mother, keeping the baby with her until Olivia was well enough to take over. When we met for child exchanges, she looked drained and distant, no longer the confident woman who had dismissed my concerns. She'd ask about the kids, and I'd give her short, polite answers, keeping our conversations to the bare minimum. Eventually, Nathan and Olivia assumed full custody of their child. Rumors circulated that they were struggling. Nathan's work hours had been cut, and Olivia's medical bills were mounting. Emma, financially drained, jumped between jobs, unable to find stability. Meanwhile, my home became a place of peace again. The kids and I found our rhythm: school drop-offs, weekend outings, quiet movie nights. No more midnight crying. No more unspoken tension. The air felt lighter. Emma still sent messages occasionally, emails, texts, reflecting on her choices, admitting that surrogacy hadn't solved anything. If anything, it had made life harder for everyone. I kept my responses brief, only discussing the children. One evening, my oldest looked up from their Legos. "Dad, do you still love Mom?" I knelt beside them, choosing my words carefully. "I care about her because she's your mom. But sometimes, when trust is broken, love changes." They seemed satisfied with that, returning to their bricks as if the question had already been answered in their mind. Kids are simple like that. Honest. Direct. It's one of the reasons I love them so much. As months passed, the divorce faded into memory. I had the house, my career, and most importantly, my kids. Emma drifted in and out of their lives, never quite finding her footing again. And me? I finally felt free. Nathan and Olivia had their baby, but from what I heard, their new life was far from perfect. Between mounting medical bills, constant financial strain, and the overwhelming demands of a newborn, they had little energy left to support Emma. She turned to her parents, but their help only extended so far. People would ask me, "Why didn't you help her after the baby was born?" She was obviously struggling. My answer was always the same. She made her choice without me, and she had to live with the consequences. Some shook their heads, calling me heartless. Maybe I was. But trust and honesty are the foundation of any marriage, and she had disregarded both. My revenge wasn't about anger or public shaming. It was about stepping back and letting her fully experience the weight of her decisions. She had assumed my support was guaranteed, but I withdrew it, leaving her to face the reality she had created. The judge sided with me, and so did life itself. If you were to ask me now if I regret how firm I was, My answer would still be no. Emma was the one who betrayed our marriage, and I simply gave her what she claimed to want: independence. No financial ties. No emotional cruz. No pretense that we could survive a betrayal this deep. In the end, I walked away with my dignity and my children, while she was left to grapple with the consequences of her so-called selfless act. That's how Emma, the woman I once loved, became nothing more than a stranger to me. And that's how I found my peace, not in revenge, but in refusing to save her from herself. If that makes me cold, then so be it. Because in the end, preserving my self-respect was a price I was more than willing to pay. Dear listeners, I would love to hear your thoughts on this story. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you liked it, don't forget to subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. Plus, you won't miss out on great content coming soon.